At the time of uploading, we are just 1 month away from the launch of the new Batman cartoon, Batman Caped Crusader. This will be the first original Batman cartoon since Beware the Batman, which first aired over 10 years ago. Now there's a show that doesn't get the appreciation it deserves, but more on that at a later date, I'm sure. We're here to talk Caped Crusader. Perhaps unsurprisingly, most of the videos I've done about this show have focused on the villains that have been announced so far: Clayface, Harley Quinn, Catwoman, and Two-Face. Several other villains have been confirmed, and we finally got a sneaky peek at most of them in the recently released trailer. But what I haven't really talked about much so far is the titular Caped Crusader himself, Batman. Looking at their design of Batman, he is very clearly inspired by the original Bob Kane look of the character, with short gloves, tall boots, and heightened ears. When the show was first announced, producer James Tucker emphasised the point that this Batman was very early in his career. He doesn't have allies per se, and has yet to build up an arsenal of gadgets. He's not a member of the Justice League. There's no Robin, no Batgirl, no Ace the Bat-Hound. He's a loner vigilante. All he has are his fists and his wits. And a sweet-looking car. Oh yeah, and Alfred, of course. This is a very inexperienced Batman. He's a mysterious figure, and the general populace doesn't seem to be fans of him. Having said that, in the recently released trailer, the mayor of Gotham publicly denounces Batman, saying that he's no hero. The fact that the mayor would need to come out and say this suggests that there's a sizable enough contingent of people that think he may be one. The jury is still out, however. The other key point about their Batman is that this Batman is very clearly mentally unwell. Of their Batman, Bruce Timm said, "He's a really weird human being. He's not obsessed with his parents' murder, but it changed him in a way where he's still not adjusted to being a human being. He's literally Batman. Inside, that's who he is. Whenever he's Bruce Wayne, that's not just him with a mask off, that's him wearing a person suit. He's trying to pretend to be something that he's not." This reminds me of a fantastic moment from the Batman Beyond episode Shriek, in which the villainous Shriek uses a concealed speaker to make Bruce Wayne think he was hearing voices that compelled him to commit suicide. The only reason the scheme failed is because the voices referred to him as Bruce, and that's not the name he refers to himself as on the inside. What does he call himself, you ask?
I am vengeance. I am the night. I am Batman.
Getting back to Caped Crusader's Bruce Wayne, James Tucker elaborated by saying, "There was a quirkiness we were hoping to hear beneath the surface of Bruce Wayne, where you could sense something was slightly off, but not so overt that it was weird." One thing I'm curious about is why they're making such a big deal about how Batman is the real personality and Bruce Wayne is just a mask. This isn't exactly a revolutionary idea. If anything, it was an idea brought up by Kevin Conroy back when he first started working on Batman the Animated Series. He likened Batman to Hamlet. Kevin was more into Shakespeare than comic books. A grieving hero that presented himself one way in public, but in secret acted in an entirely different way. In fact, Kevin was the one that really emphasised the difference between the Bruce Wayne voice and the Batman voice, delivering what he described as a foppish performance. So stark was the contrast that he actually had to come in separately and re-record his Bruce Wayne lines and dial it down a little bit. And gradually over time the difference between the voice for Bruce Wayne and the voice for Batman lessened even further, until they were virtually indistinguishable. So it's interesting to see that Bruce Timm is revisiting that idea. It makes me wonder if perhaps Bruce wasn't the one that made the call for Kevin to re-record his lines and tone down the difference between the two characters. It sounds like they may have even taken this initial idea and ramped it up a few notches. Either way, the spectre of Kevin Conroy looms heavily over this production, and frankly, any Batman performance going forward. It's funny because Bruce Timm mentioned that during the audition phase for Batman the Animated Series, they really struggled to find a suitable voice for Batman. But for Caped Crusader, plenty of actors turned up with a good Batman voice, but their Bruce Wayne voices just weren't up to scratch. This is because of Conroy's influence on the public perception of who Batman is and what he sounds like. And our new Batman, Hamish Linklater, is well aware of this fact. When talking about his Batman performance, he said, "I think it's actually based off of my memory of Kevin Conroy's voice. When I actually rewatched the shows, I realised that it was different, but I had him in my head." Don't we all, Hamish? Don't we all? There has been a tiny hint that Batman may realise that he has a problem because he seeks help from psychiatrist Dr. Harleen Quinzel. Although the Entertainment Weekly article states that Bruce Wayne was assigned to Dr. Quinzel for psychiatric treatment, which suggests that Bruce doesn't seek her out directly and may not be that enthusiastic about getting help. It seems to be set in the 1940s after all, back when psychiatry was something of a taboo. Maybe I'm reading into the article's wording a little too much there, but I don't think it's unfair to say that Caped Crusader's Batman has issues. Bruce Timm describes their Bruce Wayne as A persona that Batman himself has cultivated to throw people off his scent. Deep down inside, he's not a fun guy. He's not charming, he's not sexy or anything like that. He's devoted to warring on crime 24/7. From what we know so far, it seems like there's only one thing that gets in the way of his mission, and that's his attraction to Catwoman. Now, that's not to say that they have a full-blown romance. James Tucker described their relationship as being more pheromones than anything else. And by that, I don't think he means that Catwoman is whipping up some chemicals to make herself seem more attractive, in the vein of Poison Ivy. He's saying that it's a raw, uncontrollable attraction. Batman, being the obsessive type that he is, devotes all of his mental energy to capturing Catwoman and sending her to prison, because he can't stand how much he's thinking about her. Of course, he tries to pass it off by saying that he'll be able to move on once she's apprehended. But that is not how love works. Catwoman, meanwhile, thinks she's on a righteous crusade to prevent her family from falling into poverty after her father was convicted of embezzlement. She feels that her actions are entirely justified, much in the same way that Batman feels his violent actions are the correct thing to do. One thing I want to highlight from the recent IGN article, the one that showcased the first trailer, is that the Batman of Batman the Animated Series was defined by his compassion and empathy for his villains. Yeah, I've talked about that a lot in the last year or so. But this new Batman is more pragmatic. The article describes him as a single-minded soldier, one for whom Bruce Wayne is nothing more than a useful tool, which is quite a departure. I have a hunch that over the course of the series, as Batman comes into contact with more damaged people waging their own personal vendettas, people like Clayface and Two-Face, it may cause him to pause and reevaluate his position. There's potential for him to grow and develop as a character, something his villains are likely incapable of doing. And I really, really hope that one of the episodes of this series is an adaptation of Darwin Cook's seminal graphic novel, Batman Ego, which deals with exactly that topic. I feel like they're kind of setting this up for us because Darwin Cook cut his teeth working on Superman, the animated series, and the new Batman adventures, and a bit of Batman Beyond, and was a close collaborator with series writer Ed Brubaker. Darwin Cook passed away several years ago, so adapting one of his greatest stories into animation would be a wonderful tribute. But that's just rampant speculation from me. One final thing I wanted to bring up from the IGN article is that in this world, the only costumed hero is Batman. There are currently no plans for Superman, Robin, Batgirl, or any other costumed heroes. And the reason? Bruce Timm said they've been there and done that with the DCAU, so it's time for them to do something different. James Tucker was a bit more open to the idea, saying that if they ended up doing 100 episodes, maybe they'd have another hero or two show up. Maybe. I'd personally like to see the Martian Manhunter in this world, but for the foreseeable future, Batman is their singular focus. We won't have long to find out if any of my predictions are accurate, as all 10 episodes of Batman Caped Crusader launch on Amazon Prime Video on Thursday the 1st of August. I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm going to binge the entire series in one sitting, and will doubtlessly be back for more Caped Crusader videos in the future. Hope to see you then.